Welcome to the Bullvine Podcast, your source for cutting-edge dairy industry insights. I'm Bella, joined as always by the man who knows more about dairy farming than most cows do, Douglas. Today, we're diving into what might be the most financially devastating threat facing dairy operations right now, the H5N1 bird flu crisis.
Thanks, Bella. This isn't going to be one of our more cheerful episodes, folks, but it might be one of the most important ones you'll hear this year. Cornell University just released a bombshell study on H5N1 in dairy cattle, and the numbers are frankly shocking. We're talking about cows losing a full ton of milk with no recovery in sight, silent infections spreading throughout herds, and losses approaching $1,000 per cow.
Douglas, I know our listeners are busy people. What's the single most important takeaway they should get from today's episode?
Simply put, Bella, this isn't just another disease challenge. The combination of silent spread, devastating production impacts, and inadequate industry preparation makes this potentially the biggest financial threat to dairy operations this decade. But the good news is, we'll be covering exactly what smart producers are doing right now to protect their herds and their bottom lines.
Let's start with the basics. What exactly did this Cornell study look at, and why is it causing such alarm in the industry?
The Cornell researchers spent 67 days, about 2 months, studying an outbreak at a 3,900 cow dairy operation in Ohio. This wasn't some small experimental setting. This was a real commercial operation dealing with a real outbreak from March to April 2024. What makes this study groundbreaking is they tracked individual animals rather than just looking at bulk tank data, which revealed impacts that were previously being missed.
And what exactly did they find when they looked at individual animals?
The numbers are staggering, Bella. 20% of the herd, that's 777 animals, got infected. But here's the truly frightening part. 76% of those infected cows showed absolutely no symptoms while still spreading the virus. That means 3 out of 4 infected animals in a herd could be silently spreading disease while looking completely normal to the naked eye.
Meaning 3/4 of infected animals showing no symptoms? That's a biosecurity nightmare. How does that compare to other common dairy diseases?
It's unprecedented. Most contagious diseases we deal with, like mastitis or BVD, show some clinical signs that alert us. Even subclinical mastitis can be detected through somatic cell counts. But this level of asymptomatic infection means the virus is likely far more widespread than we realize. And for the cows that did show symptoms, they were 3.6 times more likely to be culled from the herd.
What about the source of the outbreak? Do we know how it started?
In this case, they traced it back to a single, apparently healthy cow brought in from Texas. Just 13 days after introduction, the first clinical case appeared, and then they had new cases every single day for 3 straight weeks. One animal, 777 infections. Let that sink in.
In fouling, it really makes you question biosecurity protocols for introducing new animals into a herd, doesn't it?
Well, Bella, I'd say a $750,000 loss should indeed make one question their protocols. The study showed seroprevalence testing, that's testing for antibodies, revealed nearly 90% of the 637 animals present during the clinical phase showed positive antibodies. And even 17 of 42 dry cows had antibodies, proving non-lactating animals aren't safe from infection and can serve as viral reservoirs.
That lines up with what a California producer experienced, right? James Wentworth from Sunshine Dairy shared his experience with this virus recently.
That's right. Wentworth reported a 5% drop in milk production across his herd about a week before any clinical signs appeared. Their rumination monitoring system flagged 27 cows with decreased activity, and when they separated those animals, testing confirmed H5N1 in 19 of them. Even with that early action, their total losses still reached $175,000 across their 500-cow operation.
So even with the latest technology and quick action, the financial impacts were still substantial.
Exactly. Early detection through technology helped limit spread, but the economic damage remained significant. This is why producers need to take this threat so seriously.
Let's talk more about the production impacts. How badly does this virus affect milk yields?
If you think mastitis hits your milk, check hard. Bird flu makes those losses look like pocket change. 2 weeks post-infection, affected cows saw milk production collapse by nearly 3/4, that's 73%, plummeting from a respectable 35 kilograms daily to just 10 kilograms.
To put that in perspective for our listeners, how does that compare to something like a severe case of mastitis, which most dairy farmers have dealt with?
Let me break it down in a way that makes the difference crystal clear. With severe mastitis, you might see production losses up to 18 kilograms per day. With H5N1, we're seeing 35 kilograms per day lost at peak. Mastitis typically resolves in 2 to 3 weeks, while H5N1 shows no recovery even after 60-plus days. Total milk loss from mastitis might be 100 to 200 kilograms, while H5N1 is causing 901.2 kilograms over just 2 months. And financially, mastitis might cost you $200 to $300 per case, while H5N1 is $950 per cow.
And even more alarming is that the cows never recovered their production, right?
Correct. Even after 60 days of observation, these animals showed no return to pre-infection production levels. The Cornell team's findings utterly contradict industry messaging that suggested infected cows typically lose 10 to 20% of production for just 7 to 10 days. The reality is far grimmer and longer lasting.
Douglas, were there any early warning signs that producers might look for?
This is where investing in rumination tags and parlor automation pays off. The Cornell team documented that both rumination time and milk production began declining approximately 5 days before clinical diagnosis was possible. Without sophisticated monitoring systems tracking individual cows, these early warning signs go completely unnoticed until the disease has firmly established itself.
And what symptoms eventually appear?
Listing, Dr. Elisha Fry from Cornell observed that the cows in Texas weren't producing as much milk, and milk consistency was very different. The cows had mild respiratory signs, weren't eating well, and some had short-term, low-grade fevers. The main clinical signs include thickened, abnormal milk, decreased feed intake, lethargy and low-grade fever, mild respiratory signs, and occasionally diarrhea.
That sounds quite different from how bird flu affects poultry, where mortality is extremely high.
That's an important distinction. Unlike in poultry, where bird flu causes devastating mortality, cattle generally recover from the virus, but the production losses linger for months. That's actually part of the problem. Cows don't die, they just become long-term economic drains on the operation.
Let's talk dollars and cents. What does this mean financially for the average dairy operation?
When the Cornell team crunched the numbers, they calculated losses of approximately $950 per affected cow, with total farm losses reaching a staggering $737,500 over the observation period. That's $750,000 evaporating from one operation in just over 2 months.
And those numbers could actually be conservative estimates, correct?
Absolutely. The researchers emphasized that the true cost could be substantially higher when accounting for reproductive disruptions, labor complications, medical interventions, enhanced biosecurity measures, and other operational impacts. These additional factors suggest many operations could face 7-figure losses from severe outbreaks.
Practical. Let's break this down by herd size to help our listeners understand what this might mean for their specific operations.
Here's the math that no one wants to face, but everyone needs to prepare for. With a small 200-cow herd, if 20% get infected, that's 40 cows and $38,000 in losses. With a medium 500-cow operation, that's 100 infected cows and $95,000 gone. A 1,000-cow dairy would face $190,000 in losses. And for an operation the size of the Cornell study herd, 3,900 cows, The losses reached $737,500.
That's enough to put some operations out of business entirely. Are these losses typically covered by farm insurance?
Unfortunately, no. Most standard farm insurance policies do not specifically cover disease outbreaks, creating a dangerous gap in protection. According to National Cattlemen's Beef Association insurance specialists, traditional business interruption coverage typically excludes infectious disease losses unless specifically endorsed.
Are there specialized policies available?
According to dairy risk management consultant David Cole from Virginia Tech, specialized business interruption policies that cover disease outbreaks do exist, but remain uncommon in the dairy sector. Cole noted in a January 2025 industry assessment that fewer than 10% of operations have adequate protection against a severe outbreak like H5N1. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, or APHIS, offers limited indemnity payments only for animals that must be destroyed, not for production losses, leaving most farms exposed to the full financial impact.
And to make matters worse, the research shows it's often your best cows that get hit hardest, right?
That's one of the crueler aspects of this disease. Your highest producing multiparous cows face the greatest risk of clinical disease. The Cornell study documented significantly higher vulnerability among these animals compared to first lactation or dry cows. This pattern has appeared in other studies as well, suggesting a possible link between cumulative exposure to the milking process and clinical disease susceptibility.
Is there a scientific explanation for why the virus targets high producers?
Scientists have discovered that H5N1 has a predilection for the udder due to specific receptors in the mammary gland. In plain language, the virus doesn't just happen to affect milk production. It deliberately targets the udder because the mammary tissue contains the exact cellular machinery the virus needs to replicate efficiently. This explains why your best milk producers get hit the hardest. They're actively producing mammary tissue, provides the perfect environment for viral replication. When it comes to H5N1, your best cows literally have targets on their backs.
Let's talk about how this virus is changing. I understand new strains have emerged since the initial outbreaks.
That's what's keeping scientists up at night. The original dairy cattle outbreaks starting in March 2024 were caused by H5N1 clade 2.3.4.4b, genotype B 3.13. But on January 31, 2025, the USDA confirmed the first detection of a different strain, H5N1 clade 2.3.4.4b, genotype D 1.1, in dairy cattle in Nevada.
And that represents a completely new spillover from wild birds to cattle. Correct?
Exactly. By early February, Arizona had also reported D1.1 in dairy cattle, confirming the virus is actively finding new pathways into herds. Dr. Diego Diel from Cornell University warned that when there is spillover of HPAI to a new species, especially to mammals, it is always concerning as the virus may adapt and gain the ability to transmit between animals.
Virically. I've heard about mutations in these virus strains. What do those mean in practical terms for dairy producers?
The D1.1 strain includes mutations that help the virus infect mammals more efficiently. Scientists have identified a PB2D701N mutation in some D1.1 sequences and a PB2E627K mutation in a B3.13 sequence. In simple terms, these mutations are like installing a better key in a lock. They allow the virus to unlock mammalian cells more efficiently, leading to faster replication and potentially more severe disease. Every time the virus jumps to a new mammalian host, it gets another opportunity to develop these adaptations.
How widespread is this in the U.S. dairy herd now?
As of January 3, 2025, the USDA had reported influenza A H5N1 in 915 dairy herds across 16 states, with California bearing the brunt of the crisis at 699 affected herds. This isn't a minor issue. It's an industry-defining crisis that's still expanding.
How are these cases being found? Is there a national strategy?
The USDA's National Milk Testing Strategy, which began in December 2024, is actively identifying outbreaks. The program collects raw milk samples from processing facility silos across 45 states, allowing detection of the virus before clinical signs appear in many cases. The D1.1 outbreaks in Nevada and Arizona were both identified through this silo testing program.
Let's shift to consumer safety. With so many infected herds, should consumers be concerned about milk safety?
While the production situation looks bleak, there is one silver lining. The FDA has conducted extensive testing of retail dairy products and found them consistently negative for viable H5N1 virus. Their sampling included pasteurized milk, cheese, butter, ice cream, and even aged raw milk cheese products, with all pasteurized samples testing negative for viable virus.
Can you share some specifics about that testing program?
The FDA tested multiple samples from a total of 464 retail dairy products, including pasteurized milk, cheese, butter, and ice cream. They also examined aged raw milk cheese products included in 297 retail samples. All tests used both quantitative reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, that's QRT-PCR, and egg inoculation methods. Every single pasteurized product tested negative.
So pasteurization effectively kills the virus.
According to a University of Wisconsin-Madison study, pasteurization is 99.99% effective in inactivating the H5N1 virus in milk, supporting the belief that the commercial milk supply remains safe. So while the virus may be wrecking your production, at least it's not triggering consumer panic about milk safety.
What about raw milk? I'm guessing the risk profile is quite different there.
Cornell University's quantitative risk assessment paints a shocking picture of the safety difference. The probability of H5N1 infection per 240 milliliter serving of pasteurized milk is 5.68 times 10 to the negative 15. That's practically zero. But for farm store raw milk, it's 1.13 times 10 to the negative 3, or about 0.00113. That makes raw milk 198,943,661,972 times riskier than pasteurized milk. That's not a typo. The risk from raw milk is nearly 200 trillion times higher.
200 trillion times higher risk. I imagine regulatory agencies are responding to this threat?
They certainly are. Colorado became the first state to mandate weekly testing for all licensed dairy farms starting July 22, 2024. Though pasteurization has proven extremely effective in inactivating the H5N1 virus, Colorado leads the nation in human cases of H5N1, including several new cases in poultry farm workers. The FDA has also issued guidance letters to state, territorial, and tribal partners, offering recommendations regarding the sale and consumption of raw milk amid the outbreak. Additionally, they've launched a new sampling assignment specifically for aged raw cow's milk cheese that began December 23, 2024, with results expected by the end of March 2025.
Let's turn to practical advice. What are the industry's leading producers doing to protect their herds?
The Cornell findings make it clear. This isn't just another disease to shrug off. Smart dairy operators are implementing 5 key countermeasures. First, they're locking down biosecurity, given that one infected animal introduced from Texas triggered this entire disaster. Reinforcing isolation protocols for new arrivals is no longer optional. Second, they're investing in monitoring technology. Systems tracking rumination and individual milk production can catch infections 5 days before clinical signs appear, potentially enabling earlier isolation of affected animals.
What other strategies are effective?
Third, they're implementing financial contingency planning, with losses potentially exceeding $950 per affected cow and lasting at least 60 days. Operations need financial buffers to weather extended production crashes. Fourth, they're enhancing surveillance for multiparous cows. Since these animals face higher risk, prioritizing monitoring of established producers could enable faster interventions. And fifth, they're looking beyond bulk tank metrics. As the researchers noted, persistent milk loss could be overlooked when only examining herd-level milk production. Individual cow monitoring is essential to capture the full economic impact.
Are there success stories of farms that have managed this threat effectively?
Horizon Dairy in Wisconsin demonstrates what effective monitoring can accomplish. When their rumination monitoring system flagged a 12% decrease in rumination time across a group of 60 cows in November 2024, they immediately isolated the group and tested for H5N1. Their operations manager, Sarah Jensen, explained that, by catching it early, we limited the spread to just 97 of our 2,800 cows. We estimate this early detection saved us over $1.2 million in potential losses.
What specific strategies did Horizon Dairy credit for their success?
Jensen credits their success to three key factors: 24-hour rumination monitoring with automated alerts, a dedicated isolation protocol that could be implemented within hours, and regular staff training on H5N1 warning signs. Their experience shows that while you might not be able to completely prevent an outbreak, early detection and rapid response can dramatically reduce the financial impact.
In Thackle, for producers listening right now, what about their milk buyers? Should they be having conversations with them?
Absolutely. With H5N1 spreading rapidly, don't wait for your processor to come to you. Ask these 5 questions now. What protocols have you established for milk from confirmed positive herds? Will you continue accepting milk from my operation if we have confirmed cases? What testing procedures are being implemented beyond the USDA silo sampling? Is there any premium or incentive program for operations implementing enhanced biosecurity? And what documentation will you require if my operation has confirmed cases? Getting clarity on these issues before an outbreak hits gives you valuable time to prepare alternative strategies.
Douglas, let's wrap up with specific, concrete steps that dairy producers should take immediately. What actions should be at the top of their list this week?
Don't wait another day. Take these 5 concrete actions this week. First, implement a 21-day isolation protocol for all new animals, based on the Cornell study showing clinical signs appeared 13 days after introduction, with a full 3-week spread period. Visit the USDA APHS website at www.apis.usda.gov/animalhealth/HPAI/dairy for their updated isolation protocol template.
That's a great starting point. What else should producers do immediately?
Second, contact your monitoring system provider about H5N1 early warning settings. Most modern rumination monitoring systems can be configured with specific alerts for the pattern of decline seen in H5N1 cases. Ask specifically about the 5-day preclinical detection window identified by Cornell. Third, review your insurance coverage specifically for disease outbreaks. Most standard policies exclude these losses. Contact your agent about specialized business interruption coverage with explicit infectious disease inclusion.
And the final 2 action items.
Fourth, develop a written H5N1 response plan with your veterinarian. The American Association of Bovine Practitioners at www.abp.org has published a template specifically for dairy operations. And fifth, schedule H5N1 training for all employees. Even part-time staff need to recognize early warning signs. The National Milk Producers Federation offers free training materials in multiple languages at www.mpf.org/biosecurity-resources.
Today's episode has covered a lot of ground on this emerging crisis. The Cornell University study has documented devastating impacts from H5N1 bird flu in dairy cattle, with infected cows losing a staggering 900 kilograms of milk over just 2 months and showing no signs of recovery even after 60 days. Perhaps most alarming, 3/4 of infected cows displayed no symptoms, allowing silent spread throughout herds before detection, with high-producing multiparous cows at greatest risk.
The economic reality is sobering. Losses average $950 per affected cow, with one operation losing $737,500, vastly exceeding previous industry estimates of $100 to $200 per case. The good news is that early detection is possible through monitoring systems that can identify decreased rumination and production 5 days before clinical signs appear, potentially saving operations millions through rapid isolation protocols.
Douglas, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Is your operation ready for the bird flu reality? Because ready or not, it's coming. With multiple virus strains now circulating in U.S. dairy herds across 16 states, immediate implementation of enhanced biosecurity, monitoring technology, and response planning is critical for operational survival. This isn't just another disease challenge. It's potentially the biggest financial threat your dairy operation will face this decade. But with the strategies we've outlined today, you can dramatically reduce your risk and protect your herd and your bottom line.
That's all for this week's episode of the Bullvine Podcast. Until next time, I'm Bella.
And I'm Douglas, reminding you to keep your cows healthy, your milk flowing, and your biosecurity protocols tight. See you next week.